Welcome to Your Pathway Home. This is Matthew Allen, and I'm joined with Jim Lee this morning from the Inglewood Church. Jim, thank you for joining us and being a part of our broadcast today. We certainly appreciate you joining us today on the broadcast. We're looking forward to talking and discussing your Bible questions over the next 20 or 30 minutes as we're here at the Kettering Church building. Certainly appreciate you tuning in this morning. Your Pathway Home is a work of the Kettering Church of Christ here in the Dayton area, and we are excited to be on the air today. We're here every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock in the morning Eastern Time, and this is an opportunity where you can write into us, email us, type in your Bible questions and comments, and Jim and I will answer those live for you on the program this morning. This program is also archived on YouTube. Kettering Church of Christ has a YouTube channel that you can access during the week and watch archives of this program. And you can also, we check our email all during the week, so if you are going through the week and something pops up in your mind, we'd love to hear from you. You can contact us in a number of ways. You can type on the comment line below on the screen. You can send us an email, yourpathwayhome@kettering.church. Again, yourpathwayhome@kettering.church. Well, Jim, how are you doing this morning?
I'm a little wet, man. Good weather for ducks, obviously.
Yes.
No, we need the rain, and we'll take whatever the Lord blesses us with here.
Yes, it has just been. It was really amazing yesterday watching all the rain come down and how much rain we were getting, and just I guess it's from that hurricane that went
That's
over.
What they're saying.
Yeah.
Saying,
So.
Yeah.
Well, Jim, one of the things that I wanted to spend some time talking about this morning, and I had sent you some information earlier in the week, really had to do with an article that I came across doing some research on some other things late last week. And I wanted to talk just a little bit about this article. It's called How to Ruin Your Life in Your 20s. And it's written by Jonathan Pokluda. And it basically, I thought it was a really good article with some very good principles in it. Because one of the things I think that happens with a lot of people is they get to going in their life. You come out of living at home. Everything's new. Everything's free. You can call your own shots. You're kind of out from the shadows of living at home. And so what happens in your 20s? You make a lot of decisions. Who to marry, what kind of family, how to lead your family, so on and so forth. And before you know it, you're in your 30s and 40s, and there's a lot of baggage from very poor decisions that you've made in the past, and now it's affecting you spiritually.
Exactly.
And, I've seen that through the years as a gospel preacher, and no doubt you probably have as well. And so I wanted to just kind of talk about that this morning because I think what happens if you're not careful in a lot of churches is the fact that you have a lot of people coming up that don't pay a lot of attention, don't take things seriously in their younger years, and then midway through life, things start to click. Well, I've got to get my spiritual life in order.
That's right.
I've got to get going. I've got to get to serving and being there for others. And instead of being able to serve effectively, and sometimes in a leadership role, and I think churches are running into issues where there's kind of a gap coming in who's going to step up in future years and lead in leadership roles. And it is so important for our younger Christians to be taking their spiritual lives seriously now.
Absolutely, man.
So that they can be prepared to serve later.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to kind of go through this article, and we want to invite our viewers this morning to be able to comment and to raise any questions that you may have in regards to this, and we'll react to that here as we go through the program this morning. But one of the things that happens, and the author of this article kind of talks a little bit about it, is you kind of, I think we've all gone through this, Jim, where you reach a stage in life where you just want to do what you want to do.
Mm-hmm. Been there, done that. Man.
Yeah. I think you have a lot of people sometimes that think that they can just live the way they want to live. Mm-hmm. It's all going to be good. You don't have to worry about it. The consequence, if there's any consequences to this, I will deal with it later.
Yep.
And then I tell you how Satan works. Well, that consequence may happen for everybody else,
but not for me.
But not for me.
Not for me.
I'm better than that. I'm smarter than that. It'll be different for me.
Yeah. I'm the exception.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And so, this idea of doing whatever you want to do, and it's out there. Think about how the media
big time
is telling us. Mm-hmm. You go out and you can do this. You deserve this.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
You take care of it. You do whatever you want to do. And one of the things that the Solomon wrote about in Proverbs, he says, "The simple believes everything, but the prudent gives thought to his steps."
Exactly right.
That's Proverbs 14:15. And that's a really great passage to think about. Living life with purpose, living with a plan, and not just letting yourself do whatever you want to do.
That's right, Matt. On the flip side of that, thankfully we have biblical examples of young people, whether it be a Daniel, whether it be a Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, whether it be a Timothy. We've got Old Testament examples, we've got New Testament examples, and we see where proper training as a young person by the parents eventually leads one. Doesn't make them that they're going to be perfect, no stretch of the imagination, but their choices. Everyone comes to that fork in the road. You got to make up your mind. Which direction do I want to go in life? It's my choice. As Matt alluded to a moment ago, sometimes we make the wrong choice, all right? And when we make those wrong choices, and we've all made them, all right, we've got to recover from that. Hopefully we recover from that. But understand there's always consequences, to making those wrong choices. Now, we can correct the choice, but sometimes the consequence may linger on us. But we're talking that perhaps about, the future of the church here.
Right.
Our young men that's in the body of Christ now. The scriptures lets us know that, and this I think can fall on the leadership of the home, it can fall on the leadership of the church, but where there is no vision, my people perish, all right? And so under a local church, perhaps with shepherds, local shepherds, it's obviously a good idea that they be making those preparations now with the young people, all right? Sure, the training comes from the home, we understand that, but from the local church and under the leadership of the local elders / shepherds, there needs to be a training for the future. We oftentimes say this, Matt, that our young people are the church of tomorrow.
Right.
Oh, yeah, true. But listen, they're the church of today also.
Oh, right. Absolutely, they are. And so it really comes down to living with purpose.
That's right.
Living with discipline, and really taking the track that there are going to have to be some things I'm going to tell myself no about. And I appreciate some of the things that you alluded to with some of the younger people in Scripture. I think of Joseph.
Yes.
In Genesis 38.
Yes.
He's a young man. He's propositioned by the wife of basically his employer, and he ran from that situation. Incredible discipline. And passages like what Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, I really think are not applicable just for those who are in their middle age or late life. It's for every Christian, where Paul says, "I discipline my body, and I keep it under control, lest after preaching others I should be disqualified." But the principle there is self-discipline.
Self-control, self-discipline is exactly right. That's what it takes. Matt, we hear so much about peer pressure. We've been hearing that for decades now.
Right.
Listen, peer pressure never goes away at any age in life, really.
Yeah.
But more so we bring it toward our young people. And we've been there, okay?
Yeah.
We've been there. and to instill in our young people this need to say no. There used to be a slogan, just say no to drugs.
Right.
Well, yeah, just say no to sin. Let's put it out there, in any regards, say no to it, Joseph was that prime example.
Yeah, just fleeing from it, running from it, and we're either doing one of two things in our spiritual life. We're either running toward God or running away from God. And so this is something that we really need to be encouraging each of us to be doing on a day-to-day basis, but especially encouraging our young people to not give in to the pressure of doing whatever they want. Again, Solomon saying, the prudent gives thought to his steps. Every decision that you make today is going to affect how you live tomorrow.
That's right. It's okay to be the odd man out, school, college, wherever you're at, workplace, things of that nature. It's okay to be that person who takes a stand, to show your courage, to show your determination that, Christ is first in my life. Yes, you'll probably receive some negative comments about yourself. Be that as it may, that goes with the territory of being committed to the cause of Christ,
It really comes down to, Paul writes in Galatians chapter 2 about how he had been crucified with Christ. It was no longer he who lived, but Christ lived in him. And the life he lived by faith in the Son of God.
Right.
When you think about that passage there, it's a life of total commitment. And boy, if we could really be working to encourage our young people to live that kind of life.
Sure.
And really, one of the most effective ways of encouraging our younger people to do that is by making sure we ourselves
Exactly.
are setting the example in that. So
that's key, Matt. That's just vital to see it in your home life, from your parents, your siblings. But when you come together to worship God in the local church, to see it in the congregation, the consistency of this good example, that it's just not a farce, it's just not something that people put on
Right.
Sundays,
Right.
They see it throughout the week. That is vital.
that it is vital, and I think a lot of us could probably do a lot better
Yes.
in those kind of things. Well, we certainly appreciate so many of you who are joining in from around the country, watching your Pathway Home this morning. People from Kentucky and Virginia, Florida, the Philippines, Colombia, welcome. We're just glad you're with us this morning. And we want to invite you to some of the things we're talking about this morning. Jim and I are referencing as far as discipline in life and holding back from just living however you want to live. If some of those things are kind of on your mind, you've got a Bible question or comment related to that, or just something else that popped up in your mind this morning you'd like two preachers to talk about from the scriptures this morning, we'll be glad to do that. You can contribute this morning, type in your comment on the bottom of your screen, or send us an email, yourpathwayhome@kettering.church. Again, yourpathwayhome@kettering.church. Jim, one of the other things that the author in this article talks a little bit about, if you want to mess up your life in your 20s, is live outside your means.
Oh, wow.
That's a big one, isn't it?
Yeah, a real big one. Listen, again, been there, done that,
Yes, yeah, it really is something that we've got to, and this is a big deal. I just wrapped up an undergraduate degree. It took me 25 years. Finally got done last December, but I've spent much of the last 5 years on the campus of Wright State, and walk around that campus 4 or 5 days a week, and a lot of those kids are my daughter's age.
Right.
And just thinking about the tens of thousands of dollars of debt that those young people are incurring, and many of them getting degrees that they're going to have to go on and get a master's degree or get a doctorate degree in order to really to be able to make a lot of money to pay off all the student loans they're incurring.
Exactly.
And while I love the idea of getting college education and the amount of learning and things that adds to your life, it is absolutely scary to see how so many of our young people today are getting themselves wrapped up in debt.
Yeah, it's a sad commentary, Matt, but nevertheless, it's reality. This happens. It goes back to choices. Yes, obviously, there's nothing at all wrong with furthering your education, getting a good education. And sometimes, Matt, on one side of that, even that fails you sometimes. Some people will drop out, but yet they've incurred this huge debt and things. And you move from the college campus of getting a college education, and then you look around and here's that peer pressure again that we get caught up in. Well, my buddy's got this, your daughter says, well, Susie's got that and I want one. And they will find a way eventually on how to obtain that, sometimes legally, sadly, sometimes illegally. And that's just a bad road to go down, The Bible warns obviously about the riches, getting caught up in this world. John would write there in 1 John chapter 2, beginning at verse 15, to love not the world, neither the things that are in the world. And there's a reason not to love the world. He said the love of the world, nothing's in it but the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the pride of life. Get that? The pride of life.
Yeah.
John would stipulate and say, that's not of the Father, but that's of the world. And then he says the world is passing away, Matt, and the lust thereof. But if you abide in the will of the Father, you abide forever.
Yeah, in 2001, I bought, it's the only vehicle I've ever bought it was basically brand new. It was a demo, but it was basically a brand new vehicle, just a few thousand miles on it. And, I just remember, this is so cool, this is so nice, this is great. And, we ran the wheels off that, and by the time it was done, that van was ready to go to the junkyard.
Yeah.
It was over. And everything that's shiny and new today, one day is going to be junk, and it's going to be ready for the landfill.
That's exactly right.
And
and for our young people, Matt, should they be watching their parents, and you've got young teenagers and maybe children in their 20s, as far as that goes, this is significant to warn them and teach them on budgeting and things of this nature. The proverb writer says there in chapter 22 at verse 7 that, if you go ahead and sink yourself in debt, think about this, that the rich rules over the poor and the borrower is the slave of the lender.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, you want headaches, you want stress, you're going to get it, if we get out of control in that regards. And again, so many of our young people can't see that right now, but need to.
Well, it's right, and it could really, really impact your life. And I know I speak from experience on that. I'm sure that you've been there and done that too, as most of us have in life. And so, the sooner that we can learn these lessons, the better.
That's right, Matt. Let me interject, please. I can remember my father telling me when I first got married. He said, here's some advice. He says, first of all, don't get a credit card. Don't buy them credit. Well, all the other young people, this was when I was in my young married life, of course. All the other young couples, we'd go out with them and they'd throw down a card. Well, I wanted to throw down a card. So we threw down a card. Went right against my father's advice. And he said, when you're out shopping, he said, you need to ask yourself 3 questions. And I said, well, what are they, Dad? He said, do I want it? Yeah, I want it. Do I need it? Yeah, I need it. And number 3 was, can I afford it? Boy, those are words of wisdom.
Yeah.
Sadly, I didn't take his advice, Matt, at that time, But I grew to learn that, that he knew exactly what he was talking about.
Yeah, I think for me, it took me getting into middle age before I learned.
Yes.
Before I learned some of those lessons.
I hear you, brother.
But, living beyond your means is something that can really, really saddle you down as far as in your life. And the sooner we can learn on that, the better it will help us later in life.
Absolutely.
One of the other things that the author talks about here as how to ruin your life in your 20s is feed an addiction. And I really hope, I think in every congregation probably has somebody that's fighting some sort of addiction. And I think our minds always go to illegal drugs or something like that, but it doesn't have to be that.
It doesn't have to be that.
It can be money, it can be pornography, it can be just spending money or whatever.
Exactly.
But we've got to learn to try to get those things under our control and really to look at and understand what we're susceptible to.
That's right.
In life.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think we just have a kind of a built-in weakness for various things.
And sometimes it's self-inflicted, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's right, Matt. It is. Remember that there are always choices. If whatever your addiction may be, like you said, it doesn't have to be drugs, it doesn't have to be alcohol, it doesn't have to be sex, and just right on down the line as far as that goes. But understand this, as a child of God, we want to come from this perspective. We're warned from Galatians chapter 6 at verse number 7. Paul starts off in that verse by saying, "Be not deceived." Now, there's words of advice from the Apostle Paul. Be not deceived. All right? He said, God is not mocked. You can't mock God and get by with it. Now, you may mock God, but you won't get by with it. He goes on to imply that, whatever you decide to sow, that's what you're going to reap.
Yeah, that's right.
And if you sow to the flesh, well, you're going to reap corruption. I mean, there's consequences big time coming. But if you sow to the Spirit, then you're on a much better pathway.
Yeah, Paul says at the end of that verse, Galatians 6:8, if you sow from the Spirit, you will reap eternal life.
Yes.
And that is what it's all about.
That's exactly right.
Is realizing that there's more to life than life.
Sure.
This life.
Exactly.
And I think when we're living in our 20s, I think sometimes we just live like we're going to live forever.
Yeah, that's just the course of man, so to speak. Sometimes, eat, drink, and be merry, man. That's the philosophy. That's an age-old philosophy, but it's a vain philosophy.
Yeah, right. And so the idea here is try to deal with those as early as you can in life. Put those things away.
Get a handle on those. That's right.
Because it only gets harder to fight as you get older.
That's exactly right.
The Solomon says, "The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the treacherous are taken captive by their lust."
There you go.
That's Proverbs 11:6.
So we need to resolve. Folks need to resolve to starve their addiction.
Right.
It can be done. And, don't have the defeatist attitude, well, what's the use? Look where I'm at. There's no hope. There's always hope. Where there's life, there's hope.
That's right. So what do you think about all of this as you're watching this morning to what we're talking about? We'd love to hear from you this morning. Type in your comments and questions. We'll read them on the air. Keith is watching this morning from Kentucky and talked about how Christians need to understand that nothing in this world is worth more than their soul. Their time, their money, possessions, all are subject to what's coming ahead in the future.
That's right, Matt. Jesus warned of that in Matthew 16 at verse 26. What does it profit a person if they gain the whole world and lose their own soul? Or watch this. What shall one give in exchange for his soul? Too often times, I'm saying we, even as Christians, will put a price tag on our soul. You see, that it's for sale. For whatever's out there that is alluring me, that I want, that I desire. And Jesus warns against that, Matt.
He certainly does. And I know for our catering people, we have talked a lot over the last year or so about passages like the Matthew 16:26 passage, Mark 8:34, other passages where we've talked about learning to deny self. That's a biggie.
Yes,
It really is, and that kind of leads me to this other point that's made here in the article that really fits in with what we've just been talking about, denying self, and what will a man give in exchange for his soul? The author talks about, believe this life is all about you.
Yeah.
If we can get over that, and I don't know, maybe sometimes it's not fair. I think as older people, we look. I remember in my 20s, which wasn't that long ago.
Yeah.
People that were my age now, kind of being very critical of all of us coming up back in the early 90s. And as we were getting out of high school, getting into the real world, working, and my first job, and some of the older people there where I worked would kind of be critical of us, that we didn't work that hard, and we didn't care. We wanted everything now. And I find myself doing that.
Yeah.
With the generation
Now.
with my kids' generation
Yes.
that's coming up, and maybe it's always been that way. Maybe each generation comes along, likes to be critical of the other. However, it is important to make the statement that we need to get away from the idea that life is all about us.
Right.
And that cuts across the generations,
Yeah.
doesn't it?
Yes, it does, man. That truly does, Me, myself, and I,
Yeah.
there's just too much of that in our country, / world today, that it's all about me, and it's not all about me, but we have to hopefully learn sooner or later that it's not all about me, that, there's others that I need to be obviously mindful of,
Yeah, you're exactly right. Our author that we're using this article from this morning writes, people who become the biggest reality in their world are dysfunctional. They always end up either disappointed or delusional, and when they leave this life, their world disappears, and they actually don't have any deep impact.
That's right.
If you want to be important, make a difference, live for God, serve others with your life, and Jesus was the greatest example of this.
Amen.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
And I really, really like that comment there because
Sure.
it sheds a whole lot of light on this. And so life is about serving others. It's about putting others ahead of yourself. And again, the sooner that young people can learn this,
Right.
the better.
Right, that's right. And again, from a Christian perspective, as you alluded to, Matt, Christ was the epitome of the servant.
Oh yeah.
Oh my, and just in his walk of life, he just taught others by his example of serving. I have not come to be served, I have come to serve.
Yeah, that's the passage that I was turning over to. Looking here in Mark chapter 10. Verse 45, the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve, and to give his life as a ransom for many. And just before this, in this text, the disciples are asking, we want to sit at the forefront. We want to be up there with you, right at the right hand of God.
Yes.
We're about all this power. It's all about us.
Yeah.
And Jesus really sets the record straight there.
They missed it, didn't they?
Yeah.
They certainly missed it, yeah.
And Jim, those disciples are really no different from us.
No, that's right. That's exactly right. It's easy to fall into that trap. If we're not preparing ourselves, for the Christian walk, on a daily basis, in a faithful walk every day, we'll fall.
Yeah, exactly right. Solomon said, pride goes before destruction and a haughty spirit before a fall.
That's right.
Rich wrote in this morning and said, the Me Too movement is about serving others and putting others first. That he's complimenting your point and talking about how it really seems that there's a lot of people out there, it is all about them.
Yes.
Yeah.
You stop and think about it. You go to Matthew 19, you look at the rich young ruler. He's rich, he's young, he's a ruler, okay?
Yeah.
But then he had a sense of urgency one day, as the story goes, where he wanted to inquire to the Lord, and he finds Jesus, and one gospel account says he ran to Jesus, and asked, "Good master, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And Jesus told him to keep the commandments, and he said, "Well, I've kept them all." Just paraphrasing, "I've kept them all. What lack I yet?" So what did Jesus do? Well, he did what he does best. He went right to the heart of the matter. He knew what would hold that rich young ruler back, and he told him to get rid of everything,
Yeah.
get rid of it, distribute it to the poor, and then come and follow me. But wait a minute. He was too wrapped up in self. When he heard these sayings, he went away sorrowful because he had great possessions.
That is one of the saddest,
Isn't it?
verses
Yes.
in the entire New Testament.
Yes.
He went away sorrowful, for he had many, many possessions. And I have known people that have basically made that same decision, maybe for something a little bit different.
Yes.
I read this recently too, that there's a tremendous contrast between the rich young ruler in Matthew 19 and the Apostle Paul. Both are confronted by Jesus. Both are called into service by Jesus. The rich young ruler, Matthew 19, walks away. Paul says in Philippians chapter 3, "I gave up everything. I counted everything as loss so that I may gain Christ."
There you go.
And so it's a really powerful comparison. And the point is every one of us are like one of these two individuals.
Exactly.
We're either like the rich young ruler or we're like the Apostle Paul. And the question really boils down to, who are you going to serve?
That's exactly it,
Yeah.
Matt. The Luke, the 9th chapter, Jesus talks there again about that self-denial thing. How important it is. And then he puts into perspective, listen, if you're going to follow Jesus, you got to give yourself up, Then he gave the illustration about counting the cost.
Right.
There is a cost factor, not just financial, No, there's some sacrifices on our part that we have to get rid of, that baggage and everything that we've been carrying around. Yeah, it's got to come off,
Yeah.
We can't keep doing what we were doing and what the flesh enjoyed doing. We got to get rid of that. Yeah.
Well, it's really all about delayed gratification.
Yes.
And that is something that is missing in a wide swath of our culture these days. It's all about immediate gratification.
Yes, that's exactly right.
Well, Jim, we are a little past 8:30 this morning.
Already?
Hard to believe.
Wow.
Yeah, look at that, 8:32.
Oh,
And we have, the time has just flown by this morning. We certainly appreciate those of you who have tuned in this morning for
you.
doing so. Thank you for joining us.
yes.
And we want to remind you that Your Pathway Home is a work of the Kettering Church of Christ. We meet at 4600 Bigger Road here on the southeast side of Dayton this morning. We can hope you would join us. If you're in southwestern Ohio this morning, join us for our Bible classes. And we have a children's devotional at 9:30. Bible class at 9:45, and then our worship service this morning at 10:45. Jim, you work and worship with the church in Englewood on the north side of town.
Yes.
When are your service times today?
Matt, 9:30 this morning for our Bible study. Classes obviously for all ages. 10:30 is our worship hour. We'll meet again this afternoon at 2:30. But I'd like to plug our live stream also, Matt.
Yeah.
We're live stream on Facebook. Look up the Englewood Church of Christ. That's Englewood with an E. There's an Englewood I out in California and in Colorado. But we're the Englewood with the E. Englewood Church of Christ on Facebook. And we live stream every service.
All right. Well, Jim, thank you for being with us this morning, and thank you for joining us here on Your Pathway Home. We're here every Sunday morning, 8 o'clock Eastern Time. If during the week you have a Bible question that you'd like to raise, email us yourpathwayhome@kettering.church. We'd love to hear from you. Until this time next week, may God bless you as you serve Him.